Good morning, and thank you again for joining us. And again, we welcome Andy Marsh, the Chief Constable. I appreciate your time. So, another day, another lockdown, but it is very different, this one. It's referred to as lockdown 2, and it is different, but it's disappointing, it's frustrating. We're having to change all our behaviours all again, but we've been given this real opportunity, and we've seen all the figures going the wrong way. We've seen the figures increasing, particularly in Bristol, but there's nowhere that has escaped. And by changing our behaviour, by taking personal responsibility, by not mixing and mingling, we have an opportunity of getting the transmission rate down. And if we get the transmission rate down, then we can get back into a lower tier when we come out. And thankfully, we've now had the news that there is a vaccine in sight. So there's some real positivity, but a lot of it is down to us and our personal responsibility. So, Andy, is there anything that you'd like to say before we start?
So the new lockdown arrangements for this 4-week period, so the organisation is having to adapt, Avon and Somerset Constabulary, in a way that we're all having to adapt in our private lives and our working lives. So we're operating with people working from home where they can, where they need to come to work, which is obviously police officers and police community support officers. As far as possible, we're COVID secure. And our role is to encourage compliance, to explain the reasons for the regulations, and on occasions enforce them. Mm-hmm. And so what the message to the staff is that we need to play our role. We believe that compliance will be encouraged where people understand the rules, where people think they're fair, and where people feel that they're legitimately enforced. And that's our role to do that. So in doing that, being observant that the numbers of infections have risen, in my own organisation as well as across the community, actually we've turned up the notch on our enforcement. We're getting more reports from the public and we're doing more enforcement. But what I would say about the regulations, they are law, and obviously to break them is a breach which will incur a fine in the first instance. They're all designed to reduce the likelihood of spread, and we're standing 2 metres apart. Hands, face and space is what we hear about. So the rules require people to wear a face mask on public transport or in shops. They have limitations on the number of people that can gather in private or in public, and there's certain new restrictions on the workplaces. What I would say, we get a number of calls asking for us to help explain them. We're happy to do that, but the government.co.uk website has got some really clear advice, and I do think these regulations are understandable, and what I would encourage people to do is use their common sense and sound judgment to abide by them and the spirit of them, as you say, to reduce the likelihood of spread and ensure that we move out of this lockdown as soon as we can.
Yep, and that website, that gov.uk website, is very clear with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with some of the questions. So last Thursday, the government announced the new regulations, and again that we're being told that we have to stay home unless for certain reasons. So what does this mean for policing in Avon and Somerset?
Well, the regulations obviously have got a lot of media coverage, and we observed in the first lockdown lots of reports of breaches and concerns. We then experienced through July and August and the early part of September a much quieter period in terms of reports to us. We're now getting about 650 reports either online or on 101 of breaches every week, which is quite a lot. That's a significant increase. And we've been given some additional resources, as have local authorities, but our additional resources amount to £680,000 to be spent between now and the end of March next year, to support our efforts to encourage the compliance with the COVID regulations. And we're standing next to one of our additional cars. We've taken it out of the decommissioned pot, we've given it some very cheap removable branding, and we are running a 7-day-a-week programme with that additional money to do our part to ensure as much compliance as possible.
Thank you, and I think these vehicles are important, but all the messages are really important. That that you will go through the 3 E's, as you say, encouraging, and but will enforce, and that dialing up the notch, I think, is important. We did a straw poll with the public, and People, 51% said the police were getting it about right, which is really, really good. But there was a 40% who said that they wanted a bit more activity, and I think this is just testament to that.
And it wasn't an insignificant poll. I think well over 1,000 people chose to respond. So it's important that we listen to that and we respond. And those reports that I mentioned of people ringing in with coronavirus concerns, we do respond to them. We're now responding in person to well over 50% of those calls, using in part the additional resources, but in part also particularly our neighbourhood teams. Where people will not take our advice, we're not there to endlessly explain the regulations. We will move to a ticket. We've issued in the last week more than 20 tickets. We might talk about some of those examples in a minute, but it's certainly, there's some very substantial financial penalties for people who choose to ignore these regulations.
Thank you. Let's move on to, we've seen in the past on our television that we've had some unlicensed music events, what we could call raves, where a few individuals are taking part. Well, in fact, there was a lot of individuals that were taking, about 700 or so, and they were showing some real hostility to the police and flagrantly disregarding the government regulations. So, what are the police doing to stop those from those organisers who are putting themselves forward to organise such events?
So, just before I move on to that, the Yate rave, if we call it that, we have issued tickets to people who are not quarantining. Mm-hmm. And we will work in partnership with other government agencies to visit and check quarantining where it's appropriate, and we will issue tickets if we need to. We're working in partnership with local authorities to support and manage businesses to make sure that they understand what they need to do to comply. And we have also issued tickets for people who are in groups of 2 or more where they shouldn't be. In terms of the unlicensed music event, the rave that took place in Yate, that was at the end of last month, beginning of November, it was a really significant event. We attended within 12 minutes of being called, and there were already 250 to 300 people there. I felt it was very important to release that body-worn video footage, and if anyone hasn't seen it, please have a look on our website and witness. That's just one part of the body-worn video footage. We've got many, many hours of the violence, threats and intimidation used towards police officers. There were missiles thrown, bottles thrown, punches, kicks, fireworks fired at the officers, all sorts of really significant violence. The officers didn't retreat. They put a cordon around the premises. They stopped other people attending, many hundreds, we think. These events grow incredibly quickly. And then once we'd mustered some support from surrounding forces, as soon as it was practical, we moved and cleared the event. We seized the sound equipment, the generator, which they'd used once we'd cut the power to the premises. They had a generator in there. It was a very well organised, pre-planned event. We arrested 8 people, and I'm pleased to say that we've currently issued 2 £10,000 tickets to people we believe are involved in organising the event. If anyone was there, I would say don't sleep soundly at night. We're reviewing many hours of body-worn video footage where we identify people. You'll be getting a ticket, and anyone who used violence towards police officers, wherever they came from, in whichever part of the country, we will hunt them down and arrest them and bring them to justice. So I do anticipate many more tickets to be issued as a result of that investigation, Sue. It was shocking behaviour, a complete disregard of any of the COVID regulations, and a willful negligence around the risk of taking that virus back into their own homes, family members, friends and contacts who may be very vulnerable at a time when the virus was peaking in and around the West Country. And so I think the police officers did a fantastic job in responding, and if people haven't had a look at the footage, look at it and judge for yourselves.
And you and your officers have my strongest and full support of what was absolutely despicable behaviour, and the fact that those individuals have possibly taken that infection back to their parents and grandparents is, you may think if you're young that you're invincible. We know you're not, but you've taken it back. You could possibly have taken it back. So thank you for that. We've also received a question about the students, about some of their, because when they came back we saw a rise in some of their infections. How do the police and the universities work together on supporting not only the students but also local people?
So we are working in really close partnership with universities within the police force area of Avon and Somerset, and I know that you've actually met the Vice Chancellors, I understand. And so when I say we're working in partnership, we are heightening where the data tells us, the reports of concerns tell us, the universities tell us they would like some support in managing this process of 4Es. We would rather not give out tickets. We will if we have to, but we want to work in partnership with the universities under very difficult circumstances for them and the students and staff that work there, to ensure that we minimise the risk of spread and allow them to continue their business as best they can. So heightened patrol, lots of engaging and explaining, and a little bit of enforcement where it's absolutely necessary. Obviously all of the universities, I know they've got really good plans. They've really thought this through. They can take their own disciplinary action against students that are not working with them constructively. I think, like us, they'd rather not. But this is very much a partnership effort, partnership between us, the universities, the staff and their students. And it's the same as more broadly with the COVID regulations, a partnership between us and local authorities, the health service that are doing such a great job, and the population that we're all here to serve. So
thank you, Andy. And thank you for dialing in. I'm hoping that you have found this interesting. If you have any questions that you want me to ask the Chief Constable, then please send them in. But this is a real opportunity during this lockdown, and it's up to us to make a difference. And I know it's challenging to many of us, but we will come out of this, we'll come out of this working together. So until the next time, stay safe.